In the darkest hour of World War II, when Europe had fallen and Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany, one man's voice thundered across the radio waves. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." This is the story of Winston Churchill, a man of words and action, whose stubborn will and fierce courage steered Britain through its gravest trial. From his privileged yet troubled youth, to his controversial career, and finally his role as the savior of Britain during World War II, Churchill's life was a saga of ambition, failure, resilience, and ultimate triumph. In this video, we follow his rise, his darkest setbacks, and the defining moments that made him one of the most remarkable leaders in history. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born on November 30th, 1874, at Blenheim Palace, into the aristocratic family of the Dukes of Marlborough. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, was a prominent but troubled politician. His mother, Jenny Jerome, was an American socialite. Churchill's childhood was marked by loneliness. Sent to boarding schools, he was often neglected by his parents and struggled academically, except in history and English. Despite poor grades, he was determined to prove himself. After several attempts, he entered the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst and graduated into the cavalry. His early career combined soldiering and journalism. He fought in Cuba, India, Sudan, and famously escaped from a Boer prison camp in South Africa, becoming a national celebrity. His daring exploits and vivid newspaper reports built his reputation. He was not just an adventurer, he was already shaping himself as a man of destiny. By 1900, Churchill entered Parliament as a Conservative MP. But restless and ambitious, he switched parties to the Liberals in 1904, seeking greater opportunity. Churchill quickly rose through government ranks. By 1911, at just 36, he became First Lord of the Admiralty, responsible for modernizing the Royal Navy. He championed converting ships from coal to oil and strengthening Britain's sea power. But his ambition often led to controversy. During World War I, he masterminded the Dardanelles campaign and the Gallipoli landings of 1915, a disaster that cost thousands of lives. Though he was not solely to blame, Churchill carried the stigma for years. Resigning from the Admiralty, he even served briefly in the trenches of France to restore his reputation. After the war, he returned to politics, shifting back to the Conservatives. His career was turbulent. Brilliant speeches, bold reforms, but also bitter mistakes. He opposed Indian independence, defended imperial policies, and made enemies across the spectrum. By the 1930s, many saw him as a relic, out of touch with the times. From 1929 to 1939, Churchill spent much of his time out of power. These became known as his wilderness years. He warned repeatedly about the rise of Adolf Hitler and the threat of Nazi Germany. While most politicians pursued appeasement, Churchill called for rearmament and vigilance. He was mocked as a warmonger. Newspapers ridiculed him. Parliament ignored him. But he studied intelligence reports, listened to refugees from Germany, and saw danger where others saw peace. His isolation only deepened his resolve. As he later said, "An appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping it will eat him last." In September 1939, war finally came. Britain declared war on Germany after the invasion of Poland. Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister, quickly lost credibility. In May 1940, after the fall of Norway, Chamberlain resigned. At last, Churchill was summoned to lead. On May 10, 1940, as German panzers swept across France, Winston Churchill became Prime Minister. Britain faced invasion, defeat, even annihilation. Yet Churchill projected defiance. In his first speech as Prime Minister, he declared, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." These words, carried over radio into homes across Britain, electrified the nation. By June 1940, France had collapsed. The British army barely escaped at Dunkirk. Hitler dominated Europe. Many expected Britain to surrender, but Churchill refused. In his famous speech to Parliament on June 4, 1940, he roared, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall never surrender." It was more than rhetoric. Under his leadership, Britain prepared for invasion, strengthened its air defenses, and endured the Blitz, months of relentless bombing by the Luftwaffe. While London burned, Churchill walked through the rubble, visiting survivors, rallying morale. His presence was a weapon as powerful as any aircraft. Churchill understood that Britain could not win alone. He cultivated alliances with the United States and the Soviet Union. His relationship with President Franklin D. Roosevelt was crucial. Through the Lend-Lease program, America supplied vital war materials even before entering the war. Later, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin formed the Big Three, guiding Allied strategy. Churchill traveled across the world to Washington, Moscow, Tehran, and Yalta to coordinate the war effort. He coined the term Iron Curtain to describe the post-war Soviet threat, but during the war he set aside differences to secure victory. By 1945, Hitler was defeated. Churchill stood at the pinnacle of triumph, celebrated as the man who saved Britain and helped free Europe. Ironically, in July 1945, just weeks after victory, Churchill's Conservative Party lost the general election. Exhausted voters chose Labour and Clement Attlee. Churchill was devastated, yet he accepted the people's will with dignity. In opposition, he warned of the new threat: Soviet domination in Eastern Europe. In 1946, in Fulton, Missouri, he declared, "From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent." His words defined the start of the Cold War. In 1951, Churchill returned as Prime Minister at the age of 76. Though his health declined, he continued to serve until 1955. In 1953, he received the Nobel Prize in Literature for his memoirs and oratory, a recognition of his mastery of language as much as politics. Winston Churchill died on January 24, 1965, exactly 70 years to the day after his father's death. His funeral was the largest state ceremony in Britain since that of Queen Victoria. Leaders from around the world came to pay tribute. Churchill's legacy is complex. He was a hero of freedom, yet also a defender of empire, a master of words, yet prone to controversy. But above all, he was the leader Britain needed in its darkest hour. As one biographer put it, he was not always right, but he was always great. From soldier to statesman, from failure to triumph, Winston Churchill's life embodied resilience. His speeches lit a fire in millions. His courage defied tyranny, and his legacy still echoes in the free world. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more untold tales of the people who shaped our history.